Right. Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Mumal, and I would like to talk about my personal pick for out of the nominees for the Greatest Peacemaker Award. So, for your consideration, I'm going to be talking about Colman McCarthy. But before we get into anything about him, I want to go into peace because it's such a complex topic. So, I want to talk a little bit about what peace is and what exactly we can do to understand peace, and then we'll get into Coleman McCarthy's view of peace and what he's done throughout his life to further peace studies and overall contribute to making the world a more peaceful place. So, peace is generally considered a state free of violence and war and the absence of the fear that it may resurface. And it's kind of difficult to define, like I said, so in this class in particular, we did break it down into three kind of more broad topics, those being justice and healing, structural and institutional change, and violence prevention, conflict response, and transformation. And out of these three broad topics, I would say that structural and institutional change were the ones that Coleman McCarthy focused on the most. And as far as what makes a great peacemaker, I kind of broke it down into three different topics as well. I said that one who understands negative and positive peace, with negative peace being kind of the most surface level view of peace. It's basically just the absence of conflict between two parties. And positive peace is a little bit more in depth, and it kind of deals with how that peace can kind of be sustained. So it goes beyond just the absence of conflict, and it's things that we can do as a society, things that we can do between other societies to maintain the peace. And that's what Coleman McCarthy is really big about, and we'll talk about that later. I also said one who understands all sides and perspectives, and one who seeks to spread messages of peace to as many as possible. So getting into Coleman McCarthy, he was born in Old Brookville, New York in 1938, and he graduated from Spring Hill College in Mobile, Alabama. And after that, he spent 5 years in a Trappist monastery, which is a Catholic religious order, although he didn't partake in any real religious activities. He was more of just a work hand there, but it did give him a lot of time to read, and it kind of started his venture into the world of peace. He married Mavourneen Deegan, and he served as a peace correspondent early on as well. And this is when he started to interview many activists such as Desmond Tutu and Mother Teresa. And then he went on to be a journalist for the Washington Post, which he did for many years. And one of the questions he would often ask people that he'd interview would be, how should we go about increasing peace and decreasing violence? And he claimed that a lot of the answers for this were the same, and it was go where the people are. And where are the people? Well, they're in the classroom. And I've got a quote on the right here that says, "Give peace a chance, yes, but why not get serious and give it a place in the curriculum? Peace courses in every school, every grade, every nation. Unless we teach our children peace, someone else will teach them violence." So as we'll learn later, he was a big proponent of education, and he also was a vegan, an animal rights advocate, and he tried not to drive motor vehicles. Matter of fact, he passed the 100,000-mile mark on his bicycle, according to an article published in Americans Who Tell the Truth in 2023. He also was an educator, as you might assume, and he did not believe in tests or grades. So getting into his emphasis on education, well, he began teaching in 1982, and this was when he was approached about being an educator. He was asked if he wanted to teach a writing course, and he said that he'd rather teach peace. And you can also find this quote in Chapter 7, Teaching Peace in Great Peacemakers. And he claimed that there just simply wasn't enough courses about peace. And he said that unless we teach our children peace, someone else will teach them violence. Throughout his career, he's taught at many different facilities. School Without Walls is where he started, and then he worked at Bethesda Chevy High School for a long time, Wilson High School, Georgetown University Law Center, American University, the University of Maryland, and the Washington Center for Internships. So he has a large repertoire for teaching peace. And he also started the Center for Teaching Peace out of his home to help schools implement peace studies programs, according to Americans Who Tell the Truth. And this was a nonprofit organization to kind of spread the word of peace studies, which was still a pretty minor field and a lot of schools did not offer. He also wrote 2 textbooks, Solutions to Violence and Strength Through Peace. And now getting into his idea of peace. So we discussed earlier in this course how peace is something that we're just not very conditioned to as humans, you know. War is typically seen as kind of the first option when there's a conflict. War is typically what countries end up doing, or at least some sort of conflict, maybe not to the extent of being classified as war, but violent conflict is often the first answer. And he talks about this in his TED Talk in 2016 that he gave at Georgetown University. So McCarthy believes that schools teach too much about great war generals and fighters of the past and very little about the great negotiators and peacemakers. So he often starts his lectures and talks with proposing a bunch of well-renowned fighters and generals of the past, many of which people often know and recognize, and then he goes on to talk about several peacemakers who people typically never have even heard of, which kind of proves his point. And he believes that if violence were a true solution to attaining world peace, we would have reached it by now, because of how much warfare there has been throughout human history, and how little peace we've seen throughout human history. And he believes that his way of life contributes to a more peaceful world, such as abstaining from the use of motor vehicles and being vegan and being an advocate for human and animal rights alike. And now getting into why I believe he deserves this award. Like I said earlier, he has a big emphasis on positive peace. So really the small bouts of supposed peace that we see throughout the world and throughout history is nothing, and educating people is the first step. So education of peace over violence, and he has spread his message to tens of thousands of individuals throughout his life, and he's continuing to do so. Many of these being youth, and he says that that's really where it starts. When we continue to teach about peace more in the classroom, then it's only going to lead to a more peaceful society. Another thing is he doesn't condemn those who do not agree with him. He only wants to teach those that wish to learn. And he has a clear and deep understanding of peace studies through his time working with a lot of peacemakers, such as Mother Teresa, Muhammad Yunus, Perez Esquivel, and Desmond Tutu. And he's also been the recipient of many other awards, such as the Pax Christi Teacher of Peace Award in 1993, the Olander Peacemaker Award in 1996, the Alicia Patterson Foundation Fellowship in 1998, the Peace Abbey Courage of Conscience Award in 2009, and the El Hebrew Peace Education Prize in 2010. And then I wanted to talk about some quotes as well, because he has many of them, such as, "It's better to build a peaceful child than rebuild a violent adult. The earth is too small a star and we too brief a visitor upon it for anything to matter more than the struggle for peace. Nonviolence is a risky philosophy to live by. It is no guarantee of safety. All that can be said of that is it's less a failure than violence." And this quote in particular I really liked because it's often his rebuttal for people that claim that propose situations where nonviolence simply wouldn't work. And his response to this is that he understands that nonviolence isn't always the answer, but in most scenarios it can definitely be the answer, and it's important to teach it as a potential answer, and he thinks that's where the education system has failed. And he also said that peace is the result of love. And this quote, it might be the most open-ended, but I think it's also maybe the most impactful. Peace and love are two things that are very difficult to comprehend, and people have such different definitions of it, but when you look at it at its core, it's pretty easy to understand that peace should be something that everybody wants to attain, yet it seems so difficult and so out of reach. So his thought that starting in the classroom and starting young is the best thing that we can do is something that he has truly lived by, and I think it's very admirable that he's devoted his life to teaching the youth about peace, and I think that's why Colman McCarthy is the most deserving nominee of this Greatest Peacemaker award. That's not to say that all of these other individuals aren't deserving in their own way, but when I look at it, I see where he's coming from. I love working with kids, and they're so easily impressionable that if you teach them young, then who knows how many lives you could save in the long run. So thank you for listening to my presentation about Colman McCarthy. I hope you give him your consideration for this award, and I have listed my references here for this presentation, and thank you.